can't hear me, it's just that I'm old and I forgot to hit the mute button again. So just remind me to hit my mute button and I'll start over.
Okay, and we're live. Thank you everyone for tuning in. This is No Capes, and today I am honored to have Cal Evans on. Say hi, Cal.
Hi, everybody.
All right, so for anyone who doesn't know, and I'm sure that number is a pretty small number, but for anyone who doesn't know, who are you?
I am a cheerleader for the PHP community, basically. Officially, my day job is I run the training and certification content for Zen Technologies, and enjoy doing that. They are wonderful. Place to work. I get to work with such great people as Adam Culp, but for the past 10 years, I have just basically been a cheerleader for the community. It started the first time I was at Zend. I was running DevZone. I got to meet all the wonderful community people and decided that it was going to be my job to make sure that everybody else met all these wonderful community people. And I've had 6 or 8 jobs in the past 10 years, not all of them dealing with PHP, some of them dealing with PHP, but regardless of what my day job is, I spend time in the community almost every day, just helping people understand how awesome the PHP community really is.
You're pretty awesome. So this cheerleadering, does it come with PH pom-poms?
Sadly, no. And I did have an outfit, but Kathy won't let me wear it anymore. So.
Okay, so you've been doing, different jobs for the last 10 or so years. How did you get started as a developer?
As a developer, it's really weird. I've always loved computers, and way back in the day, I had a Commodore 64, and I was writing programs on that in BASIC and having fun. And I was working in the warehouse of my parents' company, and all of a sudden, they bought this new computer system, and it wouldn't do what they needed to do. The person that sold it to them had said it'll do all of this. Well, it wouldn't do what they needed to do. And so it was based on, it was a Unix operating system, but the software was written in BASIC. And so I got to poking around because I've been playing with BASIC for 2 or 3 years on the Commodore. And I got to poking around, and they said, well, we've got to have it print this instead of that. I said, well, if you just change this. And all of a sudden, I went almost overnight from working in the warehouse to the computer guy, and I was actually getting paid to program. And I thought this was the coolest thing ever because, it was my parents, and they knew I would do this for free, but all of a sudden they were paying me to do it. So I started that way, and I honestly have just never looked back.
So how old were you at that point?
Oh, I was a youngin'. When I got my Commodore 64, I was 19 years old. I got my Commodore 64, and I got married in the same year. So you know what that means. I was spending an awful lot of time with my computer. No, I was 19. I didn't know any better. But yeah, I started professionally programming when I was about 25. I believe. But now, you kids with the internet and all this, y'all don't realize back then we didn't have these options. I mean, my communication with other developers was BBSs or CompuServe. And for those that you don't remember CompuServe was AOL for smart people. And that's how we communicated. We didn't have this internet thing. We'd dial in, leave messages, and then it was like a very slow email system. Things have so changed since then.
I can't even fathom, and I don't really want to. It sounds
no, you
scary.
really don't want to go back to the dark ages there. So, but yeah, I was about 25 when I started professionally programming.
So when you say professionally, was that at your parents' place, or was that a different job? What do you consider?
No, I was actually being paid to write code, and there until 93. I believe. And then I moved. I had moved from BASIC to FoxPro, which is a derivative of DBase. And I moved up to Virginia Beach, Virginia, and started working at Christian Broadcasting Network. They had a huge FoxPro team. Well, huge for me. We had 30 people. That was a big team back then. They had about 30 programmers on staff, and I was one of them. And that's where I really learned the craft of programming, because I was exposed to other people. I mean, when I was doing my own thing and for my parents' company, I was constantly being told how wonderful I was. And, I actually kind of believed that. I was awesome, because I was the only person there that understood this stuff. I get up to CBN and all of a sudden there are people up there that know more than I'll ever know. And I'm like, geez, this is scary, And so I actually had to start pushing myself and putting myself out there. That's when I started writing articles. I used to write for FoxPro Advisor magazine, and that's where I got into that. And but that's my professional career. I count as when I started getting paid to program, and that was back when I was at J&J, my parents' company.
Okay, so you did BASIC and then FoxPro. How did you get into PHP?
That's a fun story. Although my friends at Microsoft actually hate it when I tell them this. I was working at CBN, and I was renting space from them in the data center, and I had 2 servers up on the internet running my parents' website. And even back then, this was 96, they were doing $500,000 a year in business off the internet. So it was a serious concern even back then. And I had 2 servers. They were both running Windows, I believe Windows NT. And Microsoft came out and said, okay, we're going to upgrade the licenses. And overnight, without changing anything, without adding any features, new operating systems and new versions of MS SQL Server were going to cost me $15,000 just for the licenses. Yeah, that was my reaction to it. I did what? So I said, I can't afford that. So I worked with the licenses I had, but I said, I got to find something new. And so finally I went to Dad and I said, look, for $4,500, I can buy a new server, put this thing called Red Hat Linux on it, and this language called PHP, and I think I can rebuild everything I've built in ASP on PHP. And sure enough, it took me about 6 months to totally rebuild the system. The lovely and talented Kathy was my graphics designer, because she also worked for my parents. And so she came in and actually made it look good. I made it work, but anything that I do that looks good, she's the one that actually makes it look good. She made it look good. And that was 99-ish when I first put up my first PHP system. And honestly, I've never looked back. I mean, I've worked with Java a little bit since then, because I absolutely had to, but beyond that, I've not found a problem I couldn't solve with PHP. I keep telling people, as soon as I find a problem that I can't solve with PHP, I'll move to a different tool, because PHP is nothing more than a tool. But I just had the problems that I'm solving can all be solved with PHP, so why bother?
Yeah, I get that. I love PHP. I haven't found much that I can't do with it. We actually had a question come in on Twitter from Amanda Folson. She wants to know, how did you get stuff done without Stack Overflow? Did you get that?
I'm sorry, I did not hear the question. Ask me again.
Oh, she wants to know, how did you get stuff done without Stack Overflow? You're muted, Cal.
Ah, dang it. I knew I was going to do that. I don't use Stack Overflow that much. It comes up in my Google searches every now and then, but the PHP manual usually has the answers that I'm looking for. I do have a Stack Overflow account. And when I was my previous job, before I joined Zend, I was working for Pantheon. And I actually got paid to go out and answer WordPress questions on Stack Overflow, which was pretty dang cool. But that's where I got most of the points that I've got on my Stack Overflow account, because since then I don't think I've touched it. But the PHP manual, and this is one of the wonderful things about PHP. I tell people there are 3 great things about PHP. First of all, it is an awesome language. It is just so easy to use. It's easy to master, but it can be used to make difficult things. Second, it has a freaking awesome community. I mean, we have just a community that will bend over backwards to help you if you really need help. And third, it has a great manual. I mean, I've worked with 6 six languages. I've coded in 6 languages and worked with a half dozen more. And PHP is by far the best manual I've ever run across. So that's usually where I start before I even go to Google.
Yeah, I I agree there. I actually have something on my Mac set up where I can, it's kind of like Alfred, but it allows me to search the PHP manual just by pressing Command Space, which
Very cool.
is very helpful. So let's see, we had a couple more questions.
Oh, and hi, Amanda.
Okay, actually, so how did you get involved in the community after you became a developer, using this tool? How did you get involved in the community?
I had moved on from my parents' company and from CBN. I was actually running a team out in California, Santa Clara, and I had 2 or 3 PHP developers, and I was playing with it, but I had no concept of the community and what it was. And I started messing around on Zen.com, and they used to have a repository of classes and stuff. This is way back before Composer and Packagist and all this, and nobody was managing it. So I volunteered to manage it, and that's really how I got my job at Zen. Was I volunteered to work for them for free, and when the job came open, they said, "Oh, well, we'll go ahead and hire you." But as I started working with all of the stuff on their website, I began to realize that I wasn't the only one using PHP, because I would read the articles in PHP Architect, and I knew those names and a few more, but my world in PHP was maybe 20 people, maybe 30. And all of a sudden, I began to realize that there are a huge number of people using this language to create cool stuff. And when I joined Zend, it became my job to go to conferences. I know that was tough, but I got paid to go to conferences and meet all these wonderful people and sit there and listen to them give great talks. And that's how I really got exposed to the community.
Yeah, going to conferences for a living, that's got to be pretty tough.
Yeah, Davey, Shafiq, and I, Shafik, whatever, Davey. I never can get that right. We're talking about that in Istanbul last week or so. We were both down there at a conference, and we were a few drinks in at this point, but we were talking about how wonderful it is that we actually get paid to do this for a living,
Yeah, going to conferences is one of my favorite things ever. So in the line of what we youngins take for granted, it occurs to me now that you didn't have a Twitter back then.
No, I predate Twitter.
And I network so much off Twitter, and I've met so many great people off Twitter. I can't even imagine what it would be like to not be able to do that. So, I mean, how'd you do that?
Twitter has changed the way the community talks, much more so than anything else that we've had out there. I joined Twitter in 2007, and there were a handful of us on there, and it's just keep growing and growing. Matter of fact, if you really want to see it, way back in the day, I actually published a PHP on Twitter list out on DevZone, and just these are all the people I know, and you need to know these people type thing, because that's the only way we had to share this information. Before that, there was IRC, and that's what we kids. IRC is Slack without all the pictures, okay? But IRC is how we communicated, and still is how most of us communicate. I know a lot of user groups and stuff like that are going to Slack, and I got no problem with that. But a good chunk of us still communicate, especially in the community, still communicate via IRC. Although these days you got many more options. I mean, a lot of the core talk on a Stack Overflow channel that is open to anyone that wants to come take a view. So,
yeah, I usually like to say that IRC is just ugly Slack.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, Slack is so pretty. I like Slack. Okay, so at one point, somebody told me that you were kind of known as Mr. PHP. And there's actually a question we had from Ben Edmonds asking how you became the kind of de facto community leader?
I don't know what to say to that one. I've not been called Mr. PHP much, and if people ever did, I would point people at Rasmus, Andy, and Zev, and all the people in the core, because I'm nothing more than a cheerleader. Those are the people actually making PHP. I have been called by my good friend Mr. Karate Wasim, 7PHP. I was called both the Pele of PHP, which is just embarrassing, and the icon of PHP. And that's the one that kind of stuck. And the reason that stuck was Jeremy Kendall, good friend of mine, the world-renowned Jeremy Kendall over in Memphis, thought it would be funny to register the domain. So if you go to, I think it's the.iconofphp.com. It actually, and he runs that. I don't have any control over that, but it brings up my logo. And he thought this would be hilariously funny. Again, I do so little compared to people like Derek Reathens or Nikita Popov or Joe Watkins or any of these people that are actually creating PHP. You know, my job is just to keep the community energized and you know, and keep just telling people how wonderful it is. That's about the only role that I will claim in the PHP community. I certainly don't claim a leadership role. That's, you know, the closest I get to that is I'm the community representative on the Framework Interoperability Group. But I don't consider that a leadership role. I speak for the community, but I don't lead the community. This community is wonderful and has very little need for any leadership I could bring to it.
Well, I think whether you claim it or not, whether you like it or not, a lot of people look at you as a community leader. So
I will not disagree with that, but I try to disabuse them of that notion at every turn. So I'm happy to help show people the way. I never claim that I speak for the community other than on the Framework Interoperability Group where I'm supposed to. I don't speak for the community, and I certainly do my best not to try to influence the community in one direction or another. My job's a cheerleader.
So let's talk about that a little bit. You know, we're both members of the FIG, or Framework Interoperability Group, if you're feeling verbose. And you represent the community. I don't know if everyone knows that, but you do. How did that come about? How did you get involved with the FIG on behalf of the community?
I believe we have David Collier to thank for that, because the FIG was founded in 2009 at Tech. And I just happened to be in attendance, and I was walking by the elevator bay, and Matthew Wiro-Finney, Supreme Allied Commanders and Framework, salute, and David Collier were about to get on the elevator, and David pulls me and says, "Come on, you need to go up in this meeting." And so I get up there, and I don't remember who all was in there, but I know Nate Abilene was up there, and Matthew and several others were up there, and they formed this FIG, and I thought this was a wonderful thing. I offered my opinion on several points when asked. I thought this was a wonderful thing, but the problem was you had to be in a project and to be a charter member. So I'm technically not a charter member of the FIG, but after they formed, the first round of business was voting me in as the community member. And there have been several other people that have said, "Hey, we need a second community member," or, you know, "Why does Cal get to do it?" And I have told everyone that has ever asked, I serve at the pleasure of the FIG, and if anyone thinks that there is a better person to represent the community, I will happily step aside because I don't want to get in the way. You know, my job there is to represent the community. As soon as the community thinks there's somebody that can better represent it, I'm all for that. But that's how I got into the FIG, quite by accident.
I think it's, I mean, as a community representative for the FIG, I think it's good that you're not really specifically affiliated with a certain project or package or framework. You know, it allows you to be impartial, I guess. And I can't think off the top of my head of a lot of other community members that are super active, kind of have their finger on the pulse of the community, and yet aren't, you know.
Yeah. Oh, there's great. If asked, I would say that people like Michelangelo Van Damme, man with the coolest damn name on the internet, or Raphael Doms, those would both be very good representatives of the Fig, because they are both outspoken. They get out there. They understand the importance of the community, but they also understand that it's not anyone's position to control the community. I would be very hesitant to turn it over to someone who felt that the community, because that's not how this community is built. This community is very self-organizing, and that's one of the reasons I love being a part of it.
Glad you mentioned Raphael. We have yet to go on No Capes without him being mentioned, so the streak stays alive. And he is a very good community member. And yeah, you're right. Now that I think about it, I said I couldn't think of anyone, and now names are popping up. Kind of foolish. Anywho, so how does that work? Being, a representative for the community. Representing the league, we have like a voting process that we go through when the Fig is having a vote to make sure that, I'm voting representative of the league. But how does that work for the community?
Honestly, I don't get involved. If you look at the mailing list, you'll see that I don't get involved in many of the technical discussions, because I don't feel that that's my role there. I feel that the Fig, the F in Fig, framework interoperability, that's the important part. So I try to stay out of those discussions. On the other hand, I try to make sure that I vote on each vote and I understand the vote, and I will usually contact 2 or 3. I have probably a dozen trusted advisors that I will contact and ask them, what do you think about this, that are not affiliated with a package. And so I try to make sure that I am truly representing what the community wants, or at least how the people that I can reach out to feel about it. I also listen on Twitter an awful lot. I monitor a bunch of people that I just feel are active in the community. I have a PHP people list, and I look at that and see if they're giving me clues as to how the community wants something to be. But honestly, my role these days, I think it was Larry Garfield, accused me of being the elder statesman of the PHP community, something that I will never forgive him for, because he's basically calling me old at this point. But I try to stay out of the discussions until the discussions go off the rail. And then I think that as a stop an argument, especially if it's personal, then I'll wrong or anything, but let's keep it professional, not let it degenerate into just name calling. That's about the extent of what I will do on the interoperability group. That I've sponsored a couple of. I did not have the honor of sponsoring you. Somebody stepped in before I could, but Chris Pitt is currently up for vote, and he had like 6 sponsors, but I was the one that got to call for the vote. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about Chris coming on. I think he's a great resource, and will be better to have him. Yeah, and I think a lot of the course correction, for lack of a better word, that you do sometimes is, it's really helpful. And sometimes conversations need that. The internet needs it, and you do a good job of it. So I want to talk a little bit about speaking. I've had the pleasure of seeing you speak twice now, both keynotes, and you are a captivating speaker. You're a very good speaker.
Thank you.
That probably comes from doing a lot of it, and also just natural charisma. But how did you get started speaking?
Okay, my very first speaking engagement. I am petrified of getting up on stage, and it's gotten a lot better of recent years, but I used to be just absolutely petrified. Matter of fact, when I was at CBN, they had a FoxPro conference, a regional conference, and the organizers were friends of mine, and they asked me, will you speak? And I said, no, I'm just too afraid to get up on stage. I was doing writing, and that was just enough for me. I started working for Zend, and basically my boss contacted me one day, called me and said, Apple FileMaker now supports PHP. And we've got a closing keynote spot at the Apple FileMaker conference. There are 1,500 people in attendance, and the guy that was supposed to do it just called in sick. You're going to Orlando to do it. You got 2 weeks to write it. That was my very first public speaking opportunity. And I got up there and I practiced it, and it was just, I mean, when there was nobody in the room, I nailed it. And I learned a very important lesson: never, ever, ever rely on the internet during your talk, because I got in there, I did my practice, there was room, and of course, nobody was picking up IP addresses. I launched a demo, and there wasn't an IP address to be had. So I'm sitting there going, if you could see this, you'd think how awesome it is. But I just, I had nothing. But that's how I got into it, and it's just kind of grown since then. I've been incredibly lucky. I mean, luckier than you can believe. I don't consider myself a great speaker. I do enjoy the keynotes, and I'm a firm believer that if I'm having fun, the audience is having fun. But I enjoy giving the keynotes. I do still give a few technical talks, although right now I think I've only got one technical talk left this year, and that's or two. I got one in Boston, and I think I'm doing one in Mexico City. The rest of them are all keynotes, and that is just luck of the draw. It's my year. Next year it'll be somebody else's year. It's not that I'm out there, got a good PR agent or anything.
So the first talk that you gave was a keynote, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And you have 2 weeks to write it, and you're in front of 1,500 people, and you have no previous public speaking experience. How does one prepare themselves for that? What did you do to get ready?
Well, I also have to add on top of that while I was a PHP speaker, or was Apple FileMaker, so I had to learn Apple FileMaker. I had to learn the PHP bridge. I had to write a project for it. Now, it was a simple demo keynote. It was much more of a technical than the keynotes you've seen me give. Okay, so it was I had to get up there and show how PHP helps Apple FileMaker programmers, and I had no clue. I got up there. I had a movie database example that will pull data from FileMaker and images off of the Netflix API, back when Netflix had an API. And I had to cobble all of this stuff together and make it work, and I had 2 weeks to do it. And I was sweating bullets when I hit that stage. I really was, because this was a massive ballroom in Orlando, Florida. It was one of those with the big screen behind you, and and I had the full stage to run, and I stood right there behind that little podium behind my computer and did my demo. I know I stunk up the joint. I really did.
So after that experience of, having your demo fail and being, really nervous, like when you got off the stage, how'd you feel? Was it good?
I can tell if I've done a good job. I can feel if I've done a good job as a speaker. And if you ever talk to the lovely and talented Kathy, ask her. I will come off the stage and either say I stunk up the joint or I knocked it out of the park. I really have never felt like there's any middle ground. That day I knew I had just done horribly. And now, the attendees were very kind. Hey, I appreciate that. Even though the technical issues, I picked something up and we started talking PHP. A bunch of us hung out in the bar afterwards, and I got to talk PHP for a little while, which was really fun. But I knew that I did not give a good effort, and that was one of the things that drove me. Now, I didn't speak again, I don't believe, for another year. I submitted just everywhere I could, but it was probably a year before I actually got another speaking gig, and I knew at that point that I was either going to put forth the effort and do it right, or I just wasn't going to do it anymore at all. I wasn't going to half-ass it.
So, your first talk, having gone what you felt was poorly, What made you want to do it again? Like, why would you keep submitting?
Oh, Kayla, I love the sound of my own voice. I just, I Kathy tells me that I have an ego that could have its own zip code. Her job, I will come off the stage and she will tell me all the things I did wrong. She knows she has to do that, and she's absolutely right, because otherwise my ego just gets bigger every time I do one of these things. I don't know. I just enjoy speaking. I got up there. I did a bad job, and it was my very first time, but I enjoyed it. And I knew that if I did a good job and enjoyed it, it would be so much more fun. So I went on and started pitching more talks. I was working at Zend at this time, and Zend would send me to conferences whether I would talk or not, which that was kind of cool. But I still wanted to get up there and talk. So I did an awful lot of the, I would pitch. People would say, no, we don't know who you are, or no, we don't need that topic, or, no, we know who you are and we're just not going to take you. And, it was finally, I got another break. And like I said, I was determined I was going to do good on that one. And I did better. This was a technical talk, not a keynote. If I remember correctly, it was most of my technical talks have been PHP from the command line of some form or another, because I love doing that. And I did a better job.
So the reason I asked that question, the first time I gave a talk, it was a lightning talk at a conference at Laracon, New York, actually. So it was a single track conference. So, everyone in attendance pretty much was in the room, which is a similar thing that you get when you're doing like a keynote and everyone's present. And I did bad. It was very bad. And I was so nervous. I was so scared. And, but when I got off that stage, it was like the biggest high. And, I wanted to do it again. I wanted to do more. And I wanted to do it better. And I think what a lot of people will fall into is, it takes quite a bit of gusto, I guess, for most people to get up the nerve to submit. And then when you're selected and you do your first talk, if you do a poor job, there's kind of the inclination to say, okay, well, I'm never doing that again. And I think it's really important to, try again, because it's pretty awesome. It's a good feeling.
First of all, you didn't do that bad. I was there. Now I was in the back. I was in the back room watching it on the monitor, but I do remember it. You did not do that bad. I will show you bad one day. Okay, I know bad. I've set the bar pretty low. No, you did good, but yeah, you got back up. You did it again, and that's what I'm trying to drive people to. In fact, I'll tell you this, because I'm pretty sure the tweet's already dropped. I'll announce the project right here. I not a month or two ago that I was just going to put the little thing, it works for me. And how I do talks is different than everybody else. But what Bo Simonson does to prepare talks is different than everybody else. But I'll tell people, I'm going to do this little webinar, and I'm going to tell you how I prepare for one, what I do the day of, what I do after the talk, and what keeps me going. Why I keep doing this, even though I've been to PHP Benelux one time. I was there for the original one. I got to close it. I've applied every year, and every year they said, sorry, no. And I keep applying because I want to go back to that conference, not just to go to the conference. I actually am arrogant enough to believe that I've got something to say that they want to hear. And that's one of the reasons I do this is I think what through, whether it be technical or on my keynotes, what I'm talking about, other people don't know. And you were at Sunshine here, you saw down the road, and I talk about the fact that we know something other people know. And so it's up to us as community members to share what we know, even though it might sound stupid to 90% of the other developers. Goes, yeah, you've been there, done that. There's 10% of the developers behind you coming up that are walking the same road that need you to tell them this is how you do it. And as a community, that's our responsibility.
I think a lot of people fall into the easy trap of thinking, everything I know is just common knowledge. Like, people don't want to hear about that because everybody already knows it. So, why should I talk about that? And the truth is,
Here's an example. Here's an example. Okay, just give you a very stupid example of you always know something that somebody else doesn't know. I found out recently that the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, the mid-cabin bathrooms are much bigger than any of the other bathrooms on that plane and any bathroom I've been on in any plane. Matter of fact, if they'd let me, I would lock the door and bungee my butt onto the toilet and just fly the entire time in there. I got power, I got light, and I got room. But you don't know that. That's something I know that I'm sharing with people. And there are countless examples of PHP things that you've picked up along the way, that you've banged your head against the monitor until 2 in the morning, and you got it working. Now you got to share it because somebody else has not gone through that, and you can save them the head banging.
So is that a airplane tidbit going in one of your keynotes?
Actually, it's in. I start using that in. I use that now in Going Pro because I talk about you know something somebody else doesn't know. I used it in Portsmouth, and it got a good laugh. So
laughs are always good. So yeah, your new project, which you just mentioned. I actually had a question when you told me about it earlier. Is this something that you're going to be doing like a one-off, or is this something you're going to be doing, periodically, monthly, quarterly?
I have no idea. I do know that if it's well received and more people want it, there's a limited number. I'll only take right around 20 people, and so I'm not going because I want it to be intimate. I want people to be able to ask questions. But if I get 20 people and there's more people that want to do it, yeah, I'll do another one. It could be that I'm talking to myself to an empty room. I have no idea if this is going to succeed or not. I do a lot of these little experiments, and most of them work. People see Nomad and they say, "Oh, anything Cal does great." Well, no, I do a lot of stuff that fails miserably. But you got to put yourself out there and you got to try. And I've learned some stuff over the years about how it is good for me to do talks, and I'm going to share it. So,
well, cool. So I think we'll stop talking about speaking now, so that we don't cover all of your goodies, and let people learn from that. But you just mentioned Nomad, and it's one of the many things that I wanted to talk about. So, how did Nomad come to be?
Nomad came to be, it was a very specific moment. I wasn't working for a company that was in the community, and I was so I was looking for ways to get to stay connected to the community. But a friend of mine, Karate Waseem, who lives.
Can I interrupt you? Sorry, I just realized. For anyone that doesn't know, can you just tell us what Nomad is?
Oh, I'm sorry. Nomad PHP is a virtual PHP user group. It is for those that don't have a local user group. If you've got a local user group, get involved in your local user group first, and then if you want more, become a member of Nomad. We are we're not free. It's $15 per meeting or $20 per month, but we do pay our speakers. A good chunk of that money goes to speakers. I'm actually very proud of how much we pay our speakers these days. But Karate Waseem lives on the island. I think I'm pronouncing this right. Mauritius? No, not Mauritius. I can't pronounce. It's an island off the island of Madagascar, which is an island off of Africa. Okay, this island is so small that on a windy day you can't land a hot air balloon at the airport. I mean, itty bitty little island. And this guy's getting out there and he's publishing interviews with PHP community members. I'm up there. Ben Ramsey's up there. All kind of people that he's just interviewed, these long, complex interviews he sends us. When he sent me my questionnaire, there were 35 questions. It took hours to answer them all. But he would never get to go to a conference. He would never get to see all these great conference sessions that are happening. So I said, there's got to be a way to do it. So I said, okay, it was another one of these experiments. I had no idea if this was going to go for 1 month and it's dead or whatever. Let's just set up. And so I called my good friend, Rob Allen over in the UK. I said, Rob, I want to do, he had a Zen framework session. I said, I want you to do this, but I want you to do it on, we're using GoToMeeting, and I'm going to invite people to attend, and I'm going to charge them for this, and I'll give you half the money. Yeah, Rob thought I was nuts, and his wife thought he was nuts because Rob had to get up at 2 a.m. in the UK to do this talk. Now, people that have a local community can be involved. You might not be able to get PhD conference, but you can still see the sessions. It's not the same. You don't get the experience. You know the experience you get at a conference. I can't duplicate that, but I can give you the knowledge. And so that's the whole point of Nomad PHP. Started Ate needed to, I felt he needed to be a big the community. Turns out he married last year it was, and Nomad PHP and several of my friends and then all chipped in, and we flew him over in Pantheon, Marussia. That's it, Marussia. We flew him over from Marussia to Sunshine PHP, and he got to spend the week with us. And Adam Culp not only gave him a ticket, but covered the hotel for us. So it was a
Yeah, I remember it being there, actually. It was pretty awesome. I didn't realize that everyone chipped in for that, so that's even more awesome and another testament to the power of our community, which is pretty amazing. So with Nomad, are those videos that made like, do you have like an archive of videos that people can purchase or download or view after the fact, or is it very much like live only event?
No, we actually do have them up for sale. Most of them. A couple of them are free. We try to do 1 or 2 free events every year, the special meetings, and but most of them are $25, and that is more expensive than the meeting. And there's a reason for that. I want to encourage people, once you find out what Nomad is, I want you to be a part of the meeting. I don't want you to just buy the videos afterwards. We do have a lot of people, even our regular subscribers, that can't attend a live meeting, but you know, they at least get the meetings every month, and they try to participate when they can. But to me, the benefit of the whole thing is being part of the live meeting, even if all that means is you're hanging out in the IRC channel with us, and you know, you can't dial in because there's still people that works on some of them. You can't dial in and watch it, but you can hang out in the IRC channel and participate in the conversation that goes on there. That to me is helping build the community, and we actually now have a Nomad community where, you know, we have regulars that attend our meeting. We have people that are joining in each month, and I'm very excited that not only do these people who could not actively participate in the community, not only do they get to see these talks, but every month I get up there and I tell them, look, if you don't have a local user group, start one. It doesn't take much effort, but you can start one, and you can be the next.
I think your connection might have cut out.
Yeah, it dropped out. I'm running a ping, and it dropped out just for a minute, but it should be back now.
Yep, I got you back.
Okay.
With Nomad, first of all, real quick, we're gonna rewind a little bit. You kept saying IRC channel, and I'm pretty sure you meant Slack room, right?
No, it's IRC. I'm old school, so Nomad's old school. We're on irc.freenode.net, and it's pound Nomad PHP.
Sure, it's pound and not hashtag?
Yes, I'm quite sure it's pound.
Funny story, just as an aside, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I was sad to learn that she doesn't know pound or number sign. She knows hashtag.
Oh, now I just feel older.
Yeah, so do I. The building code to get into my building starts with pound, and I tried to tell her when I was teaching it to her, it's pound, da 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 da. She goes, I don't know what pound is. And I was like, well, the number sign. She's like, I don't know what that is. And I was like, hashtag?
So if I just
She's like, oh, it's one. Like, this is terrible.
Oh, jeez.
Awful.
Kids.
But so how do you pick, how do you go about picking speakers for NOAD?
It's funny you should ask me that today. Usually I go through conference websites and say which ones look interesting to me. Occasionally, I've been invited to participate. I think in the past 12 months, I've participated in 5 calls for papers, the judging portion of that for different user or different conferences. So I have access to a lot of talks that don't get accepted, but I think are really cool. Okay, but you run or you're participating in Help Me Abstract. Is that the name of it?
Yep, I did
Yeah.
that.
I started one on my blog like a week before y'all got involved in that, or I would have just got involved in y'all's. I've got a form on my blog where people can just submit an abstract, and I'll help them punch it up. Well, I announced it today, as I do every so often, and some woman said, "Hey, thanks. That's exactly what I needed," and she submitted her talk. And I looked at it and I said, this abstract needs work, but this is the talk that I want. So Jessica, and I forget her last name, but she is now our October speaker. Matter of fact, it should be up on the site by now. But she'll be doing our October EU talk, even though she's not from the EU. She's in Texas. But it's a talk on BHAT. So really, it's just a matter of getting my attention. There is no A-list as far as that goes. I keep a Google Doc of the people that have spoken and when they spoke, and then there's also a column of people that I want to invite, and every time I see something interesting, I'll throw a name in the people I want to invite. But if you got an idea, submit it. If you have experience, even better. If you don't have experience, I usually tell you, look, I want to see a lightning talk first, and I'll send you over to Joe, and Joe will get you set up for a lightning talk. But if you've got some experience and you can point me to a joined in page or a YouTube video or anything that shows me that you've done this before, and you've got an intermediate to advanced talk on a PHP topic, then yeah, we'll take a look at it, because that's really what I'm looking for. We poll the worldwide herd once a year, and the average member of the worldwide herd has 5+ years in PHP alone. So we're not looking for beginner talks. The worst attended talk I ever had was a beginning talk, and I swore I would never do that again. I'm embarrassed for myself. I'm embarrassed that I put the speaker in that position. We just don't do that anymore. But if you've got a good talk, send it to me. I'd love to hear it.
So as another aside, real quick,
Okay.
when you put out that blog post on your blog offering to give help, there were 2 or 3 people that week who did that. So you had all these great resources in the community that were offering their assistance, and that's actually what made me build Help Me Abstract, because I wanted to see if I could, make an easy to go place for that.
Yeah.
So you were kind of the inspiration there. Thanks.
Well, you've done a wonderful job, and I refer people to that also. A lot of people want more than one opinion, and mine is certainly not the canonical opinion. Okay, I give you my opinion, but I refer people. I say you might also want to submit it over here, get some other feedback. The more people we can get looking at this, the better the talk's going to be.
Yeah, I really love it. I don't do as much as I would like to do with it, but we have an amazing team of, volunteers who come through and give reviews. And it's been a really good interaction. I look at most of the abstracts. I don't always have the time to respond, but I do make sure that everyone who submits an abstract gets at least one response.
Excellent.
So I don't want people putting it out there and then never hearing about it or hearing back about it. So a lot of the advice that I've heard from conference organizers is, if you're a new speaker and you want to start speaking, the first step for that is to go to a user group and try to speak at your local user group. So Nomad, acting as kind of a de facto user group for those who don't have user groups, do you see that fitting that niche as well?
Absolutely. That's one of my goals, is to expose new talent, if that's the proper term. Showcase new talent. Chris Pitt has done, I think, 5 lightning talks for us, and I think we finally scheduled him to do an actual talk. James Titcomb did the very first lightning talk we ever did, and that was another one of those, Cal's going to try an experiment. So I called a couple friends of mine, and they said, yeah, I'll participate. And so James said, I'd love to do one on, I think he did Rabbit MQ. He was so good that I immediately contacted him back the next day and said, look, come up with an hour-long version of that. I want you to do a full version of Nomad. I'd never seen James talk before, so I was, I didn't know. But as soon as I saw him present, I knew this is the kind of thing that the community wants to hear from. And he knew the technical chops. And it's not, I'm not looking for polished speakers or, eloquent speakers or people that wax poetic. I want people, developers that have actually done this stuff. And if you hem and haw and every now and then or constantly, we're okay with that. Okay. As long as you're presenting good quality information, actionable intel, that's the important part. But yes, I always recommend, go to your local user group, start there. I've only had one local user group say, I'm sorry, Cal, we just are full up. Okay. Most local user groups are starving for speakers. So go to go to your local user group, do a lightning talk at a conference. If you're going to a conference anyhow, speak at the Uncon or do a lightning talk. Get out there, get yourself out there and show that you can do it. And it also helps you understand if you actually want to do this or not. Because if you'll do it at an Uncon, even though you're not on the schedule and you're not on the webpage and all that, then you're pretty serious about wanting to do this. And that shows a commitment to other organizers, myself included, but other conference organizers, when they start looking at narrowing down the list. Because the first pass on any of these CFPs is this an interesting topic? Do I know this person? Is this person going to sell tickets? Is this person going to do a good job? Once we get past that, an interesting topic will save you on almost all of those. You don't have to be Derek Reithens to be accepted as a talk. You have to have a good topic. Once we get past that, though, then we start narrowing it down, and then that's when we start doing research. Do I know this person? If I don't know them, does somebody else that I know them, and will they vouch for them? Is there anything on YouTube? Do they have any blog posts? Something that's going to give us a clue that they are knowledgeable about what they're trying to talk about, and they're serious about wanting to do a good job and present good quality information. Because quality content, that's what we're looking for. That's what the people are paying for the tickets for. That's what we're looking for.
So, and you said Nomad PHP has lightning talks, and to get in contact with Joe, and that's Joe Ferguson, right?
Yes, Joe at nomadphp.com.
Awesome. He's also on Twitter at Joe P. Ferguson. So
yes,
if you're looking to give a lightning talk, and I've had a lot of people say that, when they're coming up with new talks, they'll usually give a lightning talk, and if they can fill 15 minutes with that information, that gives them a better judgment of whether they can do that.
We also post all our lightning talks on YouTube, so you do have something that you can share with with conference organizers and say, look, here's proof that I know what I'm talking about. I can't show you that I'm good at being in front of audiences, but I can show you I know what I'm talking about.
Are the full-length videos, do the speakers get copies of their full-length videos that they can share if they so please?
They get copies, but because we put them up for sale, they can't share them. So they get their own copy. And if any of the speakers ask, hey, I want to give one to somebody, we basically just create a coupon for them. They can go buy it on the store. And I've had 2 or 3 speakers want to hand out for various reasons, usually for conferences that they're trying to get involved in. I got no problem in doing that. But they are up for sale, so we don't just hand them out. Other than we do have, I think there's 3 or 4 up there. Luke Stokes, who you've interviewed. Luke was our very first free one, and he did just a phenomenal job. I've never seen Luke give a bad talk, but Luke just did a wonderful job, and his is up there. You have to go through our shopping cart, but the price is $0. You can go and check out. Go out there. Like I said, there's 3 or 4 of them out there that are free. That'll give you an idea, not only give you an idea about is Nomad right for you, but every one of them is quality content. I mean, I'm not, they're not just promo videos for Nomad. It's good quality content that you can actually use.
Cool. Do you do joined in for the Nomad groups?
Of course we do. I'm a firm believer of joined in. Matter of fact, I am user number 2 on joined in. Back when Chris started it, he sent me a link and said, "Hey, log in and see if this works." That's how I got my number 2 user there. Yes, we do joined in on every Nomad PHP and on Day Camp for Developers. I'm a firm believer in it. Matter of fact, I spend at least 30 seconds at each meeting extolling people. Look, speakers don't get any better unless you tell us what we did right and what we can do better. So give us the rating. We all love this. We love to see the little thumbs up, but we want the feedback. So, and fairly decent participation. Although I used to think it was very good. At PHP South Coast 2 or 3 weeks ago, I got 49 reviews of my keynote. Yeah, I lost it.
Yeah, I think you cut out again.
It's yeah, I cut it. I'm watching the ping, going, dang it. But anyhow, yes, we're a firm believer in joined in.
Cool. So it sounds like anyone participating in Nomad, you have plenty of resources from videos, from joined in, those kind of things that'll help you get your foot in the door when it comes to conferences. Because a lot of times organizers are going to want to see, especially for unknown speakers, credentials, as it were.
Believe it or not, most of us don't want to hire or to bring in the same speakers at every conference. Okay, we do it because, well, it's a known entity. But if we've got good talent that is out there and proving themselves and putting themselves out there, we'd much rather have the new talent than have the same people at every conference.
So here's a question, because you've been part of organizing quite a few conferences, and as you said, you've been part of the CFP selection process for a few conferences. What are your feelings on blind submissions?
You're going to get me in trouble now.
No, I am not. I mean, everyone has an opinion.
I'm not a fan. As a conference organizer, I have one overriding responsibility, and that is to the ticket holder. It is my job to put together the absolute best session or series of sessions that I can. And if you are, not you, but if somebody is submitting that I don't know and it's on PHP Unit, and Chris Hart just does the exact same topic, or a very similar topic, I'm going to bring in Chris. Not because I want to keep bringing in the same people. When Keith Casey, when we were running PHP Tech, we had a policy of 1/3 of the talks had to go to speakers who had never spoken at a conference before. But if I don't know who you are, it's difficult for me to judge, can you do the job? Okay, and like I said, Chris Hart just is a great example because he is the guy for PHP Unit or for unit testing here in North America. And I'm gonna go with Chris unless you've got an interesting idea. If you're not going head to head with Chris, that's a different story. Okay, but if I am going blind, and to go back to your question, if I'm going with a blind submission, I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're a known entity, and known entities, like I said, work both for and against you, but I need to know that to make the decision for the ticket holder. Am I building the best possible conference? And yes, I've been doing, this is actually the first year I won't do a conference in 10 years. First year I won't organize one in 10 years. So I've done this just a few times, and that I know that blind is the current vogue way of doing it. And I've got a lot of good friends that swear it is the only way to do it. And it's one of those, I'm just going to respectfully disagree with that.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, there's a lot of logistical issues, and people go back and forth. I've never organized a conference, so I've thoughts on it, but the actual implementation, maybe not. But I like hearing opinions on it, and it is definitely. I wasn't meaning to get you in trouble, and I don't think I did. But just so when you were talking about the CFP process, you kind of had it in stages where it's content first, and then you do the research on the person. So I mean, if, even in the first step where you're just doing content, is that something that can be done blind, or do you need to know even at that point about known entities?
Not generally. I need the way I do it. I need to know who it is, even if I don't know who you are. I need to know if I'm sorry. Let me state that more clearly. Even if I don't know you, I need to know who is presenting the talk, because that is an integral part of the talk. Okay. If you're a known entity, that's going to help me sell tickets. And yeah, like I said, if I've got 3 or 4 good PHP unit talks, but one of them, but they're all basically intro to PHP unit, and one of those is Chris Hartgis, then I'm going to select Chris Hartgis because that's the one people want to see. On the other hand, if I have a talk on using mockery with PHP unit, well, no, at that point, mockery makes it interesting. So I'm not going. The de facto expert is not the one that I'm looking for at that point.
That makes sense. And yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do something specifically, but I definitely appreciate you sharing your personal thought process on it. So we're about up on time. Do you have a few more minutes, or I want to be respectful
Sure.
of your time?
No,
Okay.
that's fine.
So another thing that you do, and you mentioned it briefly, is day camp for developers. So what is that?
Day camp for developers started because when I was working, I used to work at PHP Architect. Me and Keith and Marco were the ones that ran it for about 3 years and had a wonderful time there. But I kept seeing all these great talks come through the CFP for Tech that would never, ever get accepted. They were soft talks. They were soft skills. Okay. They weren't the hard technical skills. And that's what the boss wants you to do. The boss wants you to go to PHP unit. The boss doesn't want you to go to negotiating a better salary. So I said, maybe we could take these and package them and do like a one-day virtual conference. And we had some success with that. Now, these days, day camp, I haven't done a soft skill in about a year. The last one we did, I think, was public speaking, which was very well received. We had a lot of people attend that one. And I had 5 people, I think Josh Holmes and several other just great public speakers in the community and around the community got up there and did a wonderful job. But these days, they're much more technical. The one we've got coming up now is on debugging. And we've got a great lineup, but it's a hard tech because that's what sells. We we always did them on a Saturday, so you didn't have to take a day off from work to participate. And these days, since we do hard skills, we're doing them on Fridays. And what we found out is, in most cases, we're selling kits to entire teams, not just individuals these days. Most of our revenue comes from selling what we call an office party ticket, and the entire team will sit there and they'll plug a projector in, and the boss will order pizza, and they'll just have a good old time.
Sounds like a pretty good time. So is it a similar process to Nomad, where in how you get speakers for that?
Actually, no, this is very different because with Nomad, I go looking for speakers with interesting topics. Day camps are always revolve around a specific topic. Like this one's on debugging. So I've got Fabian, the guy that wrote Symphony, and he's coming in and doing profiling. Paul Jones will be doing legacy apps. Joshua Thiessen will be doing some real low-level stuff. And, but they all revolve around figuring out what's wrong with the dang application. And so it's a much different process. Now, once I figure out my topic, I've usually got the person that I want to open and the person that I want to close picked, and I start looking around for the other speakers. I go to conference if I'm have access to CFPs. I go there. I go to conference websites. I ask friends. I've gotten recommendations from user group leaders who said that I had this person speak and they did a wonderful job, and just some good talks that just come out like that. But it all starts with that topic. And once I get that topic going, then I can pick everything. In this case, with debugging, I actually had two speakers turn me down. Lorna Jane Mitchell, or Lorna Jane Bowman, I think she is now, who is a perennial on day camp. I think that out of all the day camps we've done, she's only not spoke at like 2 or 3. She's just brilliant programmer and a wonderful speaker, and she's got a talk that is right on topic. And she wrote me back very politely, as only the British can do, and said, "Sorry, but I have just gotten so much to do right now. I can't take on yet another speaking topic." It was crushed, but even I get rejected on these things. So I have speakers turn me down on these things, but it's a totally different process than Nomad, because I have to. It's thematic.
Okay. How frequently do you do them? How frequently are day camp for developers?
Usually once every time I need to pay a bill. No, that's not true at all. We try to do 3 a year. I try not to do too many of them, because I do have a lot of regulars that every time we announce it, they immediately rush out and buy a ticket. And we're very appreciative of that. Matter of fact, we usually give them discounts because they are such regular attendees. But I try not to be I try not to be the person that every time the PHP community turns around, Cal's got his hand out. So, we 3 a year maybe.
Okay, seems fair enough. So, how far in advance do you plan out topics?
Usually about 1 in advance. Like we always do 1 the Friday before Christmas, and I'm pretty sure I've got my topic nailed for that one. I'm not going to announce it yet, but I've got it in my head, and I think I know that one. I like to refer that as the most useless day of the year, because it's the Friday before everybody's about to go on vacation anyhow, and we have just wonderful times. We'll usually end up with we sell more office party tickets to those than we do to any other ones, and everybody just gets together. They spend the time learning with the team. The boss will order pizza afterwards. Maybe they'll have beer or something like that, but they've all learned together, and they've taken a day that nobody's going to do anything anyhow and actually made something useful of it. But I have one I usually keep 1 ahead of what I've announced.
So for the one, the most useless day of the year, day camp for developers, I'm assuming that it's a requirement that all the speakers wear ugly sweaters, right?
Don't really care what they wear. They're not on video like this. We only show the slides. So similar to Nomad, it is truly a pants optional event. So
I mean, that's good enough. For anyone nervous on camera or nervous about speaking, you're not going to be on camera.
Actually, when I started doing them, the technology wasn't there to do the video like this. I mean, this is really, especially with Hangouts, come a long way in the past 2 years. But and we might actually experiment with that. But when I started doing them, there was no way to do everybody speaking. Matter of fact, on our very first one, Josh Holmes was one of our speakers, and his internet connection was so bad that he had to dial in on his phone. He couldn't even use the audio and the slides at the same time.
I know a thing or two about internet connectivity issues. So
yes, you do.
But we power through it. Okay, so yeah, we're a little bit over time, but I wanted to get from you, if you had to tell a new speaker or someone who's never spoken before, if you had to give them some advice, what would you tell them?
Have fun. Because if you are not having fun, your audience is miserable, okay? Even if it's bombing, you kids won't remember him, but there used to be a guy that ran the Tonight Show before Leno called Johnny Carson. And Johnny was the master because even if he bombed, he was having fun on stage. He didn't care if anybody laughed at his jokes. So if your internet goes down in the middle of your presentation, or if your slides won't work, or whatever, it doesn't matter. Enjoy it, live in the moment, and have fun, because I guarantee you, if you're not having fun, if you are just so uptight because everything is going wrong, your audience is miserable. And that's just not going to be, they're not going to get your message. If you, on the other hand, will get up and say, hey, shit happens, and then power through it, like I've seen you do on many a No Capes, and like you've had to do it a couple times on this one where my internet has dropped out. You just power through it and have fun. And your audience is going to appreciate that, and they're going to learn something.
That's exactly why I do No Capes, because it's really fun and I like doing it. Connectivity issues aside, it's really fun. And same with speaking. It's a blast. Anyone who hasn't done it, you want to, really you do. And I have ridiculous stage fright, and I hate speaking in front of people generally. But sharing knowledge at a conference, helping your peers, it's amazing. If you haven't done it, you should do it. The other thing, the last thing I wanted to ask you is, for those people who don't have a user group and they want to start one, what advice do you have there?
Do it. Do it now. Don't think about it. Don't wait until this is over. Wait till you get work tomorrow and ask somebody if it's a good idea, because anybody you ask it's going to be a good idea, they're going to tell you no, of course not. Do it now. Sit down. Fire up your email client, write 2 people and say, hey, tomorrow night, let's get together at whatever restaurant, bar, whatever you can get a table at. And for 30 minutes, we're going to talk shop. Okay. You do that. You've had your first meeting. You don't have to get a logo. You don't have to start with a Twitter account. That'll all come later. I guarantee you, if you do this once, then next month, somebody's going to say, hey, y'all did that thing. Y'all can do it again, because I want to get in on this. And you'll have 3 people. And then all of a sudden it's going to grow 4. And then, yeah, you're going to have to worry about, I got to get a venue, and oh my God, I've got to order pizza and to beer or not to beer and all these other things. And those are wonderful problems to have. But it starts with you sitting down right now and writing an email to 2 friends and say, let's go talk shop.
I think that's fantastic advice. That's exactly how you do it. Yeah, I think it can feel kind of daunting to start it, because venue and blah 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 and sponsorships and whatnot. But if it's really that easy, then anyone can do it. So okay,
anyone can do it. Hell, I've started 3.
All right, so if you don't have a user group, get on that. All right, anything else for the good of cause? Anything that we didn't cover that you want to talk about?
Can't think of anything except to say thank you for No Capes. I have thoroughly enjoyed every episode that I've watched. I try to catch them live whenever I'm not traveling, but this is just a wonderful thing. I wish that I was as good as you at doing these interviews. I can only go about 15 minutes. That's why Voices is so short, is I can't keep this up for an hour, and you are so wonderful at it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I've had some really great guests, and that's one thing we didn't talk about. You have a podcast called Voices of the Elephant. Want to talk about that?
We release every Tuesday. My goal was to interview people that you may not know. Now, I do interview a lot of the same old people. Larry Garfield's been on there 6-7 times. Every time I turn around, he wants to talk Drupal. But I try to find other people that haven't been on there. You've not been on there. We're going to correct that the next time you and I are at a conference. It was a failing of mine in February that I did not interview you. But next conference we're at, but I always record them at conferences. Right now we're releasing interviews that came from Lone Star. And we just had Eli White's wife, Heather White. She was on, and it's not known, but HP architect Sandy Smith will be up next week. So that's what's coming up, and it's a great interview. So
awesome! I get the pleasure of meeting Sandy this week. So I'm speaking at DCPHP on the 7th. So I get it.
That's right, you are, and Sandy's a nice guy, really is. So
yeah, So yeah, Voices of the Elephant is great. Check that out. Nomad PHP, Day Camp for Developers, all of that. And thank you, Cal. I mean, you're an amazing resource for the community, and you do a lot of really good stuff. And I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for the kind words, and I appreciate being invited.
All right, everybody, thank you for watching. Have a nice day. See you next time.